Hey, ladies, you can have a guilt-free summer even if you love wine. I hear you. You want to stick with your diet this summer, but 2020 sucked out loud and you want to do all of the things. You've given yourself the same mental pep talk year after year, and you tell yourself, this is the year I'm going to stick to my diet no matter how good the brownies look. You're not going to fall victim to peer pressure. Seriously, you're a grown ass woman. You've got two superpowers, willpower and discipline, and they've never let you down before. All right, seriously, we've all done that pep talk, right? Guess what? This is the year that you are going to give up the Spanx and not let that plate of brownies bring you to your knees. I have created a guilt-free summer guide where I break down how that you can enjoy your summer with any of the guilt or shame about what you're eating or drinking and still enjoy your summer. So ladies, I'm laying it out there for you. You got a few choices. You can continue to do keto. You could chase your tail trying to string 75 good days together for the 75 hard, or be miserable eating 1,200 calories. Or you can grab the guilt-free summer guide so that you are not avoiding all of the things that you want to do this summer. And you finally are giving yourself peace of mind for not stressing out over, am I doing enough? So grab the guilt-free summer guide right now. Hey, Magic Makers. I just finished talking with Miss Lauren Shroyer, and it was so amazing. She is a senior director at ACE, which is the American Council on Exercise. And we talked all about injury prevention. And she just dropped some amazing nuggets, right? We basically walked through what is the difference between mobility, stability, and flexibility, right? I hear so many people say, I'm inflexible in my hamstrings, or, I need more mobility in my shoulders, or heck, I even need some stability. And we broke down what exactly that means and how do we take an injury and stay in the game, right? And how do we break away from our ego so that we can let that injury heal and be able to still be participant. We also talked about active aging and what the heck is collagen and do I need to put it in my coffee? So have a quick listen. Okay, it's not quick. We talked for like an hour. I could have talked there all night. Have a quick listen and let me know what you think. Have you been struggling with a nagging injury? Do you have something that bothers you? Shoot me an email or hit me up on the socials. Have a listen and tell me what you think. Welcome to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you are ready to find your inner magic, develop great habits, and a rock steady mindset to feel confident, comfortable, and fit in your body, you are in the right place. I am Kim Barnes Jefferson, and I'll be giving you weekly doses of health, fitness, and life tips sprinkled with humor and real talk. If you're ready to be consistent without the stress of perfection, Magic Makers, it's time to slip into your favorite pair of PJs, grab some coffee, kick back, and listen to today's show. Woo! All right. I wanted to talk about this. Okay, you guys know I always want to talk about a lot of stuff, but I become such a geek when we talk about bodies and body parts. And today I'm going to talk about injury prevention. And I grabbed a perfect person to talk about this. Her name is Lauren Shroyer, and she is the Senior Director of Product Development at ACE. And injury prevention is her jam. She started in the industry as an athletic trainer. And I think a lot of us want to be an athletic trainer, and then we get into the job and we're like, not all what's cracked up to be. And then we find other places to use that knowledge that we acquired. But that is the knowledge we're going to use today about injury prevention, because I know many of you, I hear you, oh, my achy arm, shoulder, back, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. How do we prevent injuries and how do we work around injuries? And how do we actually, stop working our way into an injury? All right. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so I'm reading through your bio and I laugh because I know when I first started in the industry, you all want to work with the most athletic of the athletic people.
Yeah.
And then you work with them and you're like, it's not all this cracked up to be.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's so true. And, athletic people who are just learning to become athletic, people who are just stepping into exercise for the first time, there's a lot of similarities there when it comes to pain and injury. And I think that's the constant. And that's what ultimately got me to move from athletics into fitness is I really enjoyed helping people to feel better so that they could just lead a healthy life in general. So I'm excited about this topic. Thanks for including me.
Yeah. And that's why when I think just as you said, what lights me up is that person who said they couldn't. And then next thing you know, you see that they can. And you're like, oh, so you can't squat, but look at you now, right? Like those are the things that just like really like Jasmine keep me showing up for work every day.
Absolutely. Oh, what a great example. Yes, yes. And people who are sad because they can't. And
Yeah.
then and making sure that they get their bodies to a place where they can again. And it's super exciting. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Because I feel like, it translates to other areas of your life that you can do something physically and it kind of starts to open up pathways in your brain to be like, well, if I can squat, then shoot, what else can I do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's so true. The confidence and empowerment that comes from reaching goals in exercise and overcoming things that you think you're not capable of doing. It's a doorway to opening your own mind to what else are you able to accomplish. And that sense of accomplishment that you get, that sense of achievement that you get with exercise, I think is empowering overall. I can do more today than I could do last week. That just feels good. It's a positive feeling. It's an energizing feeling. It's great for your mental and emotional health because you can just make progress on an ongoing basis. And even when you have injury or you have pain or as we get a little older, we've got something hurts there and something hurts here, and it only hurts when I do this, but not when I do that. What does that mean? And how do you continue to stay active and continue to meet goals, right? And I think that's important for people to understand, especially as they get a little older and these things start to get in the way. How do I maintain my active lifestyle on an ongoing basis is so important.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the perfect way to start. So, how do we stay in the game? It's like, I mean, we're fortunate that we have come of age when working out as we age is a thing. 20 years ago, it was like you retired and you like sat on the porch and rocked in a chair, just waiting for death to come. Now, people are like, hey, I want to be as active as I can for as long as I can.
Yes. It's such a huge change in mentality, isn't it? It
Yeah.
really is. If I look at the way my grandparents spent their retirement versus
Yeah.
what my plans are very,
Gardening, right? Like gardening was a big thing. Golf, very I'm going to say low impact, like no exertion type activities.
mm-hmm. Yep. A lot, I think in earlier generations was the idea that, it's almost a concept of I only have so many heartbeats in my lifetime. I better not use them up. It was this too much activity is going to wear me out.
Yeah.
But we know that our bodies actually work the opposite. The more active you are, your body adapts to that activity so that you become stronger, you have more stamina, you have more energy. And that continues throughout your lifespan, regardless of your age. And so being active for your entire life is essential to maintaining a high level of activity as you age. So getting around this stuff is really important.
Yeah, and I love saying that, hearing that, because you're right. Like I look at, my parents live in Florida and they live in an active adult community, and it's totally Seinfeld. Like I thought, like when Seinfeld like was making fun of it, holy moly, it is Seinfeld there.
So real, right?
It is so real. And so, for me, when I go there and I see the stages of aging and I see the people who are walking on their own versus the people who have walkers, I was like, how much of that is related to what I did in the past? That if I just continued, using my body, building my muscle, just walking on my own, could I avoid that?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, barring any degenerative muscular disease,
Right.
right, if we take that out of the equation, then we can say absolutely, we do have the ability to guide the way um, our active path, the active path that we take. We can guide that active path based on the
Mm.
activity that we put in today, the habits that we develop today, and the consistency that we maintain as we get older. I think those are really all the essential pieces of it.
Okay, so you hit on like two things that are just my jam: habits and consistency. Like I feel like so many people think that there's this like super thing that's out there that they're just not, they just haven't seen yet. They haven't found it on Facebook just yet. But it's here. It's habits and consistency. And so, as you just said, if I continually work out, I continually use my muscles are gonna be like, oh, so I'm not supposed to just sit here and rest. Like my muscle, I'm supposed to be able to lift a gallon of milk out of the refrigerator.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And it is those habits and consistency. And, when I'm working with clients who have sort of gotten used to maybe a deterioration in strength, or maybe have gotten used to not being able to do all of the things they once did, or maybe never could do.
Right.
It's that slow progression to more that gets really exciting. So, and I'll use an example, is working with one of my clients, just this wonderful woman who just was not naturally strong. So for most, and especially upper body wise, so most of her life, she would rely on other people to lift things and help her with things. But she was divorced and living alone. Her kids had, are empty nester, right? And she didn't have people to lift things
Right.
house for her. So it was very important that we, even though she was, in her late 50s, that we began to develop strength so that she could lift things over her head and put them in the top cabinets, that she could pick up heavy things and carry them upstairs on her own. And that was, for her, for me to say, absolutely, we can make you stronger now at this stage of your life. That was revolutionary to hear.
Right.
Like, oh, no, it's too late. No, it's not too late. It absolutely is not too late. Let's do this. And it was really empowering for her. It's super exciting.
Right. And I love those practical examples because I feel like, a lot of times, you go to these classes and, they're telling you overhead press and they're telling you to lift heavier. And I feel like you have to like circle it back where it's like, hey, do you want to be the person who could put it in the overhead compartment? Do you want to be the person who can like put flour on the top shelf? And it helps click that it's not just you pushing weights up and down above your head. It's like, how do I take this out of this environment and use it in my real life?
Yeah, that's exactly. And I love that you use the overhead compartment.
How many times do you see that woman steps aside? Oh, hell no. I'll take it, but I don't need your help.
Right. Exactly. Like that's absolutely, no, I've got it, is a good feeling. Right. Being able to be independent.
Yes.
And that does take that consistent focus. And it is, exercise is progressive. If we do something on a regular basis, we will increase our strength and capability progressively. If we do things intermittently, our body doesn't understand that as a need to develop. And so it doesn't. It just takes the strain in the moment and it does the best it can. But if we do it consistently, our body has these just wonderful mechanisms to identify like, oh, we're going to need to lift this weight overhead on an ongoing basis. I need to add more muscle tissue now. I need to make sure that the tendons and the ligaments are stronger to prevent injury. Right. So that's where you're getting the injury prevention, is the consistency. So as we consistently lift things over our head, the tendons and the ligaments that support the muscle tissue, that support the bony connections, they all become stronger. And that's how we avoid injury. If all of a sudden we just decide we're going to lift our 25-pound bag over our head, but we haven't been doing anything, there's a pretty high risk that you're going to hurt yourself trying to get that bag in the overhead bin.
And this is the perfect direction of the conversation, because you're right. Like, most of the injuries happen when, one, we're coming off a layoff and we think that I can go right back to where I was. And so, we're in Rona times. And so the gyms have been 50-50, some are open, some have been closed, some open, close. And so for many, we have to think to ourselves, like, maybe it's been a couple months and you haven't been able to go to the gym and lift your normal weights, unless you have a home gym. But you can't expect to go back, and I'm making these numbers up. Like, if you were lifting 100 pounds 3 months ago, you can't expect to, like, I'm going to go back after 3 months of a layoff and boom, I'm going to be lifting 100 pounds.
It's 100% true. Oh my gosh. I think you're really touching on an important topic right now, because this past year plus has been a very unique time. So if you had a consistent program before, and even if you have been consistently exercising in this year plus, your exercise has probably changed. And if it has changed, you can't just jump back into your same routine that you were doing before. And that's true for me as much as it is for everybody else out there. I have not had access to the same weights. I truthfully am not really motivated to go into my garage and lift weights while my son's playing Minecraft. On the bench next to me, that is not as much me time as going to the gym and putting my headphones on. So I haven't been lifting weights as consistently, but I have been doing a lot more cardio and walking. So, on one hand, if I go into the gym and I do a different level of cardio, great, I'm in shape for that. But when I go over to the weight section, I better drop my weights. To be honest, I'll probably be entering the gym here again in a few weeks once my vaccinations are full. Very excited. And when I do that, I'm going to be dropping my weights probably to about 75% of what they were before, and work my back end just to test it out. And if that first repetition feels a little heavy, I'll drop it down a little bit lower. There's no ego here. It's all about staying healthy.
And you were reading my mind, because I think what happens is, like, your ego is like on one shoulder being like, girlfriend, we used to be able to do blah, 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 and blah. And then, like, common sense is on the other side being like, well, yeah, but it's been a hot minute since we have done it. And so it's like, like, what wins out is like the ego versus common sense. And I totally get it. And I'm one of those people who are like, I'll go in, I'm like, girl, what it's like to have an injury. And it's like, if you're someone who has had an injury and you know how long it takes you to rehab it, the common sense usually wins out. And I hate the fact that, like, I was talking about this on an interview yesterday, like, that as a society, as I guess actually a species, we have to hit the wall before we say, you know what, we shouldn't be doing stuff like that. Like, why can't our common sense, like, be like a airbag before we hit the wall?
I love that. Yes. Our ego gets in the way. I think that's completely true. It's true of everyone. I was able to, so I should be able to, and if that sentence is going through your head, take a minute, take a pause and say, oh, that's my ego talking. Because you will be able to again. And I think that's how to make that the next, like, I was able to lift this much weight, so I should be able to lift this much weight, but I can't today, and I will be able to again. And that's okay.
And it doesn't really take that much time before kind of like the pathways be like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if we want to get super nerdy, which is my favorite place to be, the neurological pathways, they kick in right away. After actually just a couple of repetitions, you'll feel stronger. So sometimes it's just drop that weight down to about 50%, do a few repetitions. So the body says, right, okay, this movement pattern is familiar. I remember this. And then, maybe you're able to go back up to 75% of what you were doing before, just after a few reps, because your body, will will quickly learn the neurological side of things. It's the strength that has deteriorated. And that strength is, as I was saying before, it's in the muscle tissue, it's in the tendinous tissue, it's in the ligament, and it's in the bone. And that's really where the breakdown usually happens first, is tendon and ligament. And that's why you have to come back to it slowly, so the tendons and the ligaments can get stronger. Those take a little bit longer. Even, your strength sometimes will come back before the tendon and ligament elasticity and strength will come back. So coming in slow is important, especially as we age. So, when you're a little bit older, you have less collagen, kind of flowing through your system. You are losing cells at a faster rate than you're creating them. So it just takes a little longer. Be patient, but it'll happen. That's for sure. It will happen. And if you want it to happen without injury, just always be checking in. Always check in with, where does it hurt? Muscle pain is one thing. Muscle pain's okay. If it's hurting closer to the joint, that's a tendon, ligament, joint tissue. You should really listen to those. Those are the things you've got to pay really close attention to and back off of.
Okay. So let's go back. So for, I think many people outside of the fitness industry hadn't had to memorize the skeleton.
Yes, you're probably right. I bet you're right. It's only my kids who go through my anatomy book, right? That's not everybody.
Right. And I laugh because it's like, my very first job as a personal trainer, I worked with a really geeky head trainer. And so every time he talked to me, it was like, I had to flash up the skeleton because everything was in the actual name of the muscle. Most people aren't talking about the actual name of the muscle when you were working with clients. And so he would talk the actual, and I'm like, wait, hang on. And I would pull it up and be like, okay, that one and that one. And it would just be out of an anatomy exam every time I had a conversation with him. And so for those of you who aren't going to flash up the screen, like a hologram in your brain, what is the difference between a tendon and a ligament?
Oh, great question. Thanks for asking. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share all my nerdy stuff. So a tendon is what connects your muscle to the bone. So I'll use a more commonly understood one, which would be your patellar tendon, which is in the front of your knee. So if you think of where your kneecap is, just a couple inches below that is the space where your patellar tendon connects to your shin bone, or the technical term being the tibia. So that tendon is connecting your big muscle on the front of your thigh, your quadricep. It's connecting the top half of your entire top half of your leg to the bottom half of your leg, so you can straighten out your leg. Go from a bent to a straightened position. Every muscle has a tendinous attachment to your bone. A very frequent injury that we see or we hear about is tendinitis, and that is an inflammation of that tendon tissue, which frequently happens from overuse. Or what I like to really help people understand is overuse doesn't mean you're just doing it the same thing all of the time. Sometimes it does, and for athletes it certainly does. But for a more general fitness population, sometimes it means a too fast, too soon kind of use. And then the tendon gets irritated because it's really not strong enough to move at the pace that the exercise program has dictated.
Gotcha. So for a too fast, too soon example, it could be simply going from increasing my mileage if I'm running. But it also could be, I'm going from lifting 12 pounds to lifting 50 pounds.
Absolutely. Both are perfect examples of how that would happen. Yes, absolutely true. Absolutely true. And then the ligamentous tissue is what holds your bones to your bones. So ankle sprain is a great example of a ligamentous tissue injury. The ligaments, because the ankle is a very mobile joint, it moves around a lot. If we didn't have the ligaments holding things together, they would fall apart. So the ligaments hold the bones into their form and then have enough elasticity to move through the range of motion that you need to walk or to run or move side to side. And the ligamentous tissue injuries tend to be more acute injuries, meaning some instance happens where you twist an ankle and that stretches or tears a ligament. So more frequently, they are acute injuries, though chronic overuse could certainly play a part in a ligamentous injury as well.
Right. So then as I think about it, everyone here has had one of these things. We've had some type of tendinitis. I laugh, I'm like doing air quotes. You can't see me, but I'm air quoting. We've all had some type of tendinitis. We've also had some type of sprain along our journey. What is the longest to come back from? Is it something that happens with my ligaments, or is it something that happens with my tendon?
Another great question. So I do love these questions. So the injury cycle is dependent upon the degree of injury. Something that is a smaller degree, if there's no tear, then those injuries tend to come back pretty quickly. When there's any level of tear, all the way up to a full tear of the tendon or of the ligament, obviously those come back very slowly and sometimes require surgical intervention. When you have an injury, your body needs to go through a healing process, and that healing process includes laying down scar tissue. That's how our body heals. We don't regenerate. So after an injury, the tissue never will look the same again. It will always have scar tissue as part of that repair. The process of repairing is if you are continuing to overwork the area while it's repairing, you will re-injure the area while it's laying down that scar tissue. And then it will continue to take longer. So even a small injury can take a very long time if somebody is overworking the area while the body is repairing it. The flip side is you should do some movement while the body is repairing it, because then you're helping the body to understand how strong should the scar tissue be? How elastic does the scar tissue need to be? How much scar tissue do I need to have to hold this in place, but not lock it in place?
Gotcha.
So it's a delicate balance in bringing back post-injury, but really dedicated or dictated by your pain levels. If the injury site hurts, you're overdoing it. It's a pretty quick reaction. The body tells you really quickly. And so really I frequently have seen people will say, well, I have an injury, so I'm taking Tylenol or Advil to control the pain.
Right. And we're going to work through it.
And then they go to the gym and they can't feel the pain. So they're doing things that their body would normally be telling them to stop doing, but they can't feel it because they've muted that pain with a killer. So really important that we're aware of what that process is so that we allow ourselves to feel pain. It's part of our body's notification system to tell us when to stop or slow down.
And I love that because I know I've heard that from my clients. They're like, oh, my lower back's been cranky, but I took some Advil, I'm totally fine. And I'm like, okay, so do you know why your lower back hurts? Before we just just pop a few Advil and head to the gym. Do you know why?
Right.
But I like how you talked about it. It's instead of muting our pain, it's like we're not going to lose our, again, air quoting, gains by missing a few days at the gym or scaling back our workout for a few days, heck, a few weeks. I know I hurt my shoulder last June, and it took me until, I'm going to say this April, for it to feel okay. Yeah. And that's very humbling. I'm teaching in front of class and I'm like, you know what? I hurt my shoulder and I'm not using weights, and that's okay.
And that's okay. And that's the right thing, because Had you pushed through that and said, no, I have to have weights. I need to represent here in front of this group and show them how to do this. You would actually be setting yourself back over and over and over again.
Oh, absolutely. And I felt like every time like I taught class, like I teach a template-based class, and I felt like every time I taught a class, I was like, are you trying to screw me? Because everything felt like it was an overhead press. I was like, what's happening here? It was like, I used it as an opportunity to be like, all right, make sure my shoulders are set back, make sure I'm like lifting it versus just kind of gutting my way through it. And I think that's how a lot of injuries happen, is that I know as a trainer, I'm all about the proper form, but I know that many people are more about, can I toss up the weight versus can I do it in a way that my ribs are stacked, my core is engaged, my glutes are engaged. It's not as sexy as, hey guys, for the gram, I just PR'd.
Not as sexy, but definitely the way you're going to come back and maintain consistency, right? And one of the things I say, just exactly what you described, like I can throw this weight up if I just do it this way, it doesn't hurt. Well, now, right. Oh gosh, have you hurt something else? What kind of compensation pattern are you creating where now maybe it's not your shoulder, but you're using your back? It seems weird, but you can use your back to get some momentum and that weight up overhead. And now you're going to tweak your back as well. So those compensation injuries can be devastating. And you use the word humbling, and I just think that is such the perfect word to say, I'm going to be humble. I'm going to say, this is my reality. This is where I am today. This is what I need to focus on. I need to be in this present moment and move through this. And when my body is ready to go to this next stage, which it will be, right? It is not permanent. It will be ready to move to the next stage. I will be ready to move with it. I will still have my good exercise habits. I will still be coming to the gym, and I will then regain what my losses were. But we need to allow ourselves to take a step back so then we can take those 2 steps forward. That's really what injuries are doing. They're saying, take a step back and then you'll take 2 steps forward. And it is the right way. I think that people feel like they're like, oh, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this. That is what you should be doing. It is the right way. Right. I promise.
Right. And it's like, like I said, it was very humbling, but it was like, back in my day when my ego was talking to me, I remember, and I was running and I was out running and I sprained my ankle and I was like 3 miles from my house. But instead of walking home limping, I was like, I'll just get home faster if I run. And for years, that ankle was like, it just never felt right until I finally did something about it. And so I know many people listening, you're probably like, you have one of those things where you knew what you did, you heard it, decades ago, and you didn't let it heal because I think I only took a day off. I put it up for an hour, so that was fine. And then I just taped it up and kept running. So I don't here's where maybe in age, you have a little wisdom, I'm hoping.
We learn from making those mistakes, don't we?
Right. At the time I was 25 and I was dumb as a box of rocks. But right. Over the years, I have a guy who does body work on me, and he's like, Kim, you're like an annuity. And I was like, annuity because I was a dumbass. Now he hasn't seen me in a couple of years, and I called him up when I hurt my shoulder, and he's like, oh my God, have you learned some lessons? And I'm like, shut up. When can you see me?
Please help. Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So this brings up a great thing. There were 3 things that I hear interchanged all over the interwebs: mobility, stability, and flexibility.
Yes.
And those 3, for everything we just talked about, they play into how we throw up the weight. Mm-hmm. So let's start first with mobility. What is mobility?
Awesome. These three concepts are so important, as you said, interchangeably used, but not interchangeable. They're just all three, they play off of each other. So starting with mobility, mobility is active movement. What is our range of motion in active movement? How much can we move safely? And then when we talk about optimum mobility is, what might our goal be, right? If we're starting at a place where we're not as mobile as we might like to be, whether it's post-injury or simply post-COVID, right? How do we get from current mobility to more of an optimum mobility? But it is all about moving actively. So a lunge is a great example of an active movement that requires hip mobility, different in one leg than the other, where one leg is back, the other leg is forward. It's almost a splits position, right? A modified split position. And if you're not extremely mobile, you might not be able to get into that lunge position at all, or at least not be able to go down into a deep lunge, either without pain or just your body says, nope, can't go down any lower. That's as far as we go. So that's really what mobility is all about. Do you mind if I go to flexibility next?
Sure.
Awesome. So flexibility differently is usually what we talk about more in a static position. So that is, if we use that example of the lunge, splits might indicate flexibility. But once you're in splits, you're there, you're flexible, and you've been able to get into splits. And when we talk about flexibility now, and somebody maybe who's not a gymnast and doesn't do or want to do the splits, we can talk about, what does it look like to be flexible, to be able to move our limbs into a certain position. In a static position, we can do a stretch, and that might increase our flexibility. Does that translate to mobility? Not always. And the reason that it might not translate to mobility is because we lack stability. So our body is not going to go into that fully mobile position if it can't be stable at the same time. So if we lack that strength in stability, then the body will stop. And that's one of the reasons that maybe a lunge, you might be able to do the splits, but you can't do a deep lunge because your body doesn't feel strong lowering itself down in a weight-bearing position into that lunge. It doesn't think it's going to get back up.
Right.
So it will stop you. It will just halt you because there is a lack of stability. So that's really how those three things work together. Now, that said, without flexibility, you also can't get into the lunge.
Right,
so
exactly.
There's a lot of important interplay, but those three things really work together as opposed to being separate.
Right. And I like all of that because I feel like many of us, as we age, we lose our mobility because we haven't really worked within that full range of motion.
Yes.
For far too long. So it kind of becomes what's the Tin Man? That's the example. We become like the Tin Man of like, and also that in those neural pathways, like, so for example, a bicep curl, our arm is meant to go all the way to our shoulder and all the way back down to our leg. But if we've been conditioned, or we conditioned ourselves to only go from our shoulder to 90 degrees, we think that's a bicep curl. And so over the course of time, we might not have the mobility to make that happen. Absolutely. And then we might not have the stability to go lower because we can't lift it back up.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you're 100% correct, because when we talk about a lot, I think, and I say we, the general it is talked about a lot as, you need to stretch.
Right.
And you strengthen. But what you also need to do is you need to do exercises that challenge your mobility, challenge your movement, so that you're strengthening in a stretched position, right? So we go to that lunge example, right? Where that is, it's a challenging position. Work your way to it. You don't have to start there, but you want to work your way to it to increase your mobility and stability at the same time. And the way to do that is, the only way to increase your mobility and your range of motion while you're mobile is by doing it, right? It's using your Tin Man example, right? Well, he got rusted because he stopped moving, right? You have to keep those joints greased.
Right. And, it's funny because mobility work isn't sexy, right? It's not many people will be like, well, I'm just not flexible. And, and it's like, it's that mobility that's going to give you that longevity over the course of time, and I like, there's two things I always tell people. I'm like, the overhead mobility, like you're going to use that for the rest of your natural born life. And squatting, like, unless you plan to wear an adult diaper for the rest of your life, you all like, you're going to sit on a toilet. Like, I'm not even going to talk about the couch. Like, you have to go to the bathroom.
Yep. Absolutely.
And unless you always want to have one of those bars on the side of your toilet, you got to learn to get back up.
Yep. That's a squat is exactly that, is just sitting down.
Right. So, I think many people, and I hate to like have it look at the older generation. And I always have to point it out, because I'm like, if we always are rounding in that hunchback position and we're not strolling our shoulders back, I'm like, do you want to be the little old lady at the grocery store with the hunchback over the shopping cart? Like has to like stop so she can lift up her upper body to like pull something off the shelf, right? So it's like this starts now.
It does. That is exactly right. And I know I feel the same way that you do. You don't want to just point to an older generation and say, you don't want to look like that, do you? But, when we look at somebody who hasn't been active throughout their life, you see that most acutely in the older generation. People who are younger, they're more mobile because they as I was saying before, their collagen levels are still high. They're still able to do things. As that begins to deteriorate over time, if you're not working it, you will lose it. Right. And when you look at an older person who has maintained their mobility throughout their life, they are out there playing golf or, playing catch with their grandkids, or, climbing on, the monkey bars with the grandkids, right? They are still 100% capable of that kind of mobility because they've continued to work in that mobility. So their body has adapted to maintain it. So you're 100% right that is just one of the keys. And because it's not really, the sexy heavy weights or whatever it is that people are kind of looking to, not Instagram worthy maybe. But I love to use it as the warm up. Like, get your body warmed up. That way, it's 10 minutes out of every workout, but you're doing something great for your body because you're moving in all of these different directions. So it gets your body actually prepped for the Instagram worthy workout as well.
Right. And so you brought this up, and I want to circle back to it. So you talked about collagen. And so, I know as a fitness professional that, after age 35, we start to lose as a fact of aging, that we lose our muscle, right? Unless we are actively lifting to try to stem the tide. But the other piece is collagen. And I know, like, for the last, 5-10 years, collagen has been like,
yeah.
So, for someone listening, they're like, should I be running out and getting a collagen? Like, should I be my collagen? Be doing? Like, is it something that I can do naturally just by lifting, or do I need to go out and put some collagen in my coffee every morning?
That's a great question. And what I'll say is from the literature that I have read, and I am not a registered dietitian, so I'm not an expert in this field, but from the literature that I have read, the jury is still out on whether consuming collagen is effective in maintaining higher collagen levels within your body. The market of people who sell collagen will tell you absolutely definitively it's going to work, but of course they sell collagen. So, you've got to be careful of marketing campaigns. But it's just the jury is out. It's unknown. We're not positive one way or another. So that means it's up to the consumer to make decisions about how they want to spend their money. Do they want to, hey, well, I have enough money, so I'm going to buy it because, maybe it works. Okay. Or they're like, you know what? I'm not going to waste my money on something that we're not certain is actually going to serve me. So I don't want to spend my money that way. We just don't know. What we do know is that exercise is effective regardless of age. We do know that we can improve mobility regardless of age. We know that we can improve strength regardless of age, and that when we exercise regularly, that it does affect all of our health markers, like our blood sugar levels, like our blood pressure, like our overall heart rate, any heart conditions, cholesterol levels, all of those things are positively impacted by exercise. So that we do know, and that we do have some definitive research that points to no matter what, staying active on an ongoing basis is an essential part of aging gracefully and with more movement in your life.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is that, movement is how you age gracefully. There are a lot of sayings that I'm like, that's just rubbish. But use it or lose it is a saying that should stick around because, I think of when I had this professor and God, at the time, I think she was 75. She was a day. And she had, her mom was in her 90s. And she would talk about how, I can't remember what the percentage is off the top of my head, that of the percentage of people who just one simple injury over the age of 70 that literally cut years off of their life because they couldn't rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And she this was 20 years ago that she told me this, and it is stuck in my head.
Yeah.
And because she was this 75-year-old lady, and she was still running around. Her mom was in her 90s, still running around, and she's like, I have to run around like this because it's someone my age. All it takes is one slip in the bathtub, one trip over or lose something in my house, and I could be out of the game.
Yep. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Hip injuries are, and I won't, put it a ranking as, the number one, number two, but there's an extremely high incidence of people over the age of 70. They trip, they fall. If they fracture their hip, the mortality rate is within a year is extremely high. And that the trip and the fall often happens because there's a lack of balance and proprioception, and exercise can help to maintain balance and proprioception as you get older. And proprioception is really just a fancy word for balance. Everybody who's listening and has never heard that word before, exercise can help you to regain your balance after there's a trip. And exercise helps to strengthen your bones.
Yeah.
So exercise can help prevent hip injury or hip fracture simply because you're doing it. Even if you do fall, your bone may be stronger to be able to withstand the fall. So without a doubt, aging gracefully is, exercise is a big and important part of aging gracefully. No doubt.
That's one of the ways I get my ladies to lift heavier weights is that I always tell them if you lift heavier weights, it's going to have a bigger tug on your bone, and the more tug on your bone, the stronger your bone, the less likely your doctor's going to be like, hey, you have, you're knocking on the door of osteopenia or osteoporosis. And everyone knows what that is because someone in their family or a friend or someone has had it, and they know just what a pain in the rump shaker it is if you happen to have it. So it's like, so let's just keep lifting the heavy muscles, keep pulling on those bones. And now you're getting free, osteobiflex without having to pay for it.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. So, and more important for women than men. But especially as they age, men lose bone tissue as well. Women just happens earlier. So.
Right. But for men, they're all about like, strong as bull, where women are like, oh, it's okay if the weight is lighter than my purse. Like, no, it's not okay.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. You don't have to push men as hard as you have to push women.
Right. If anything, I have to like pull men back by like the collar.
Yes, you're not in high school anymore. Hold on.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't care what you benched in high school.
Right.
Those days are gone.
We're gonna be a little more realistic today.
Right. So this was absolutely everything I wanted to talk about. And for those of you guys listening, I just hope that even if it's you were able to stay active throughout Corona and you lived in an area where your gyms didn't close, just be mindful that, maybe if you aren't as consistent, right? Things are a little wonky right now. Just be mindful, like go in and just do a body scan. How do I feel? And if you feel like today's a day you're just going to do mobility work, it's okay. Everything counts. Everything counts. Everything adds up, into that good quality movement bucket. So what I always like to ask my guests before we close out our call is, what's one thing that makes you feel magical?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think, and especially as I've gotten older, I've found more magic in the small things. And I think this past year has given me even more emphasis on that. And those small things for me today are my habits.
Yeah.
They are my ending my work day and going for a walk. I love to be outdoors. Removing my headphones so I can listen to the birds, noticing the world around me, and then coming home and having dinner with my family. And those things at the end of every work day bring me back to what's important in my life. No matter how good or how bad that day was at work, it doesn't define me or my life. It's the exercise clears my head, the connection with nature clears my head, and then the time with my family grounds me. And I think now that's what makes me feel magical.
Oh, that is so good. I love the small things, right? I think so many of us think that it has to be this like, I saved a baby from a burning building versus I took 5 minutes and I watched the sunset. Like that is just, I absolutely love that. The small things. Well, thank you so much. I have two questions before I let you go. Where can people find you on the socials?
Oh, I'm on Instagram at Lauren Shroyer, MSATC. And that's my prime channel social. I don't have, I guess I just don't have a lot of different channels out there, but that's my prime channel social. But professionally on LinkedIn, just look for me, Lauren Shroyer, MSATC, and you'll find me.
Awesome. And then is there anything that you're promoting or anything that people can further work with you or find out more information about you?
Where I work at the American Council on Exercise, we are promoting a campaign right now, which is really awesome. It's coming out of coronavirus. We are promoting a campaign about getting moving outdoors. And, after this long period of time where people have been asked to socially distance, have been mindful of that it has not been the safest place to be indoors, even if you're masked. People are nervous. They're nervous about getting back to anything that might put them at risk, even if they are vaccinated. And so our campaign about getting moving outdoors is to say, let's all return to activity. Let's keep moving forward, but honor where you are. And maybe where you are is not indoors. Maybe, you're emotionally not ready to be in a gym, but you are ready to be outdoors in a group. So, so let's do that. The Getting Moving Outdoors campaign is to heighten awareness around the importance of allowing personal trainers like you to have a movement permit. Or to have a permit to work in a park. So,
Right.
those things are sometimes hard to come by, and to make that more accessible to gyms and to independent individuals who are trying to get these activities happening outdoors. So that's a campaign that we're running right now, and we're getting a lot of interest across the fitness industry, because making this more accessible to people, I think, is going to be a perfect transition for people to sort of get together in groups again after not being for a long time.
Absolutely. And I'm laughing because that's how I started. I was an outdoor boot camp instructor for years. And one of the women that I worked with, she restarted the boot camp, and she's like, "Hey, Kim," she's like, "You want to come work back outside again?" I'm like, "Oh, heck no." I'm like, I love working outside, but it's like, we worked in the cold, we worked in the rain, and I just had flashbacks. So it was like, I was like, I love being outside. I love working outside. But when it's like 30 degrees outside, I'm like, no.
Nope. Yeah. And that's, what, it's so funny that you say that, because, we're based in San Diego. So we have just this great weather all the time, right?
I know. Although I will tell you this. So I'm one of my really good friends. She lives in San Diego. She's lived there for like 20 years. And I went to visit her in May. A few years ago. And I'm like, in the morning, of course, I'm from East Coast. So I wake up at 4 a.m. and it's like pitch black. And then it's like around 5 a.m., like the sun started to shine. And I was like, it's just gray. And it's like, it's sunny San Diego. I'm not seeing it. And she's like, oh, it's called May gray.
May gray.
I was like, it's not in the brochure. Like they're like, oh, it's sunny San Diego. It's never in the brochure. She's like, yeah. She goes, we have 2 months out of the year that it's kind of here. She goes, May gray and June gloom. I'm like, okay, so it has names, but it's not in the brochure.
Yeah. Yep, those exactly it. May gray and June gloom, and we're having May gray right now.
Yeah. So if I lived in San Diego, I would be like, Chris, I am with you. I am boot camp instructor for life. I live in Boston. We have like 3 good months, and then I'm like, I'm out.
Yep. I'm from Chicago, so there's about 3 months.
3 good months, and you're like, I'm out.
Yep. So, and that's why our campaign is right now. We're about to enter those 3 good months for everyone. So,
yeah. And for those diehards who like to work out hardy in the winter, 2 snaps up and a Tic Tac for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You've answered all of my questions. And folks, please reach out to her, follow her on the socials. If you have any questions, if you are a personal trainer who wants to get out and moving in an outdoor boot camp and figure out how to get a permit, hop on to ACE's website. Make sure you figure that out. If you're just someone who wants to get into a boot camp, go over to ACE, because I'm sure they'll have a listing of people who are already doing such fabulous work in your area. Thank you for listening to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you've made it this far, yay. I'm thinking you enjoyed the show. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Jefferson Coach. In order for me to keep sharing this message, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. New episodes are available every Wednesday. The Fit Girl Magic podcast is intended to provide you with tips, tools, and strategies that will help you make better decisions about your health. I really appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you so much.